Well, when we were crossing, they started shooting at us.
Right, y'all, welcome back to Combat Arms channel. Okay, so today we're checking out a video from United24, and as you guys already know, United24 pushes out some really awesome videos. As like a kind of a state-sponsored media, they do a really good job at kind of showcasing not just like the operations, but really providing a lot of insight into those operators and also kind of behind the scenes for certain operations. Now, this one is really interesting, specifically from like the CQB or close quarters battle perspective, because this is some Ukrainian special forces clearing a 9-story building. Now, if you've done any sort of like CQB or kind of like urban terrain or urban training, 9 stories is a lot, especially depending on how big the actual building is. 9 stories is a lot to consider. Not only do you have probably multiple staircases, you have rows upon rows of windows. You have potentially just like, it might not necessarily be like a linear building or anything similar to that. So you might have a lot of other areas. You might have some kind of gaps in between those 9 stories that create an opening, like an open danger area. There's a lot of things to consider. The approach is always going to be something that you need to plan very, very heavily. Generally, like a top-down approach is going to be the easiest because fighting up is very, very tough. Especially when you're talking about using certain munitions, even like throwing a hand grenade. You don't want to be trying to throw a hand grenade up the stairs because, yeah, it's not going to be a fun time. Even if, you know, you can try and like cook the grenade, as they say. I wouldn't recommend doing anything like that, though, especially in urban terrain. So this is actually in the in Toretsk. So let's actually pull up the live UA map and see where that is. Okay, so here we have the live UA map. Okay, so when we're talking about Toretsk, obviously this is the contested areas. So let's pull up. So it's in the Donetsk area. And then we have Avdiivka. So we're pretty familiar with that kind of city. You're going to see a lot of cities around here that are pretty familiar just because, I mean, we've been watching a lot of videos. We've been seeing a lot of combats. Here we have New York, and then right above that we have Toretsk. So gives us a kind of general idea of where these guys are fighting. So kind of right on that edge there. It seems like already we can kind of see here there's still like active fighting in the area. We've seen a lot of videos about Toretsk, even like the last month or two, I believe. But yeah, it seems like they're still fighting pretty heavily over that area. And we know the Ukrainian Special Forces get some stuff done, so let's see how they handled this 9-story building. I'm really interested to hear the planning aspect of everything.
Machine gunner.
Typisch.
I'm just Castet.
Sid.
Is that my car? Okay, we good.
Bond.
Head.
Bond?
Because he hits the head hard.
Bro, white head. He hits the head hard. I still don't get that. Oh man. Okay, well, we gotta kind of like slow this down. Really nice rifle setups. Okay, so we got flashlights, of course. Looks like we got lasers, aim points, or some kind of similar red dot. Damn. I was thinking it was like a breaching charge, but that does not look like a breaching charge. I mean, there's a lot of back pressure there, overpressure. Oh my gosh, okay. Really tough. I mean, luckily it's not as destroyed because once the walls start having a bunch of holes in them, you gotta start stressing about a lot more. And they look pretty sturdy at least, so you can kind of count on them for having some ballistic protection. Damn, and he's got the other building just... Oh, is that the one they're going into?
And said, a task just came in. We need to clean out a 9-story building.
Well, the task wasn't about one 9-story building. It was part of a larger plan. The bastards, if I'm not mistaken, were rolling in here freely, spreading out, and then starting to jump into different buildings. Our task was to clean out these buildings and cut off this access here.
Area, jeez. Ah, I got it.
We were always keeping an eye on what was going on. For example, on the first floor of one entrance, our guys were holding down the fort, and in the same building, down in the basement, the bastards were already set up.
The Ruskies were definitely in that
building. Why are they in the basement?
We were working on it.
I mean, I guess like
the 5-story building, right?
A patrol
and
base,
there was a
but
T-shaped building with the
The
bastards.
high-rise was also theirs, for sure. That building
can't
was
set
split
up
in
much
half,
security
right?
with that.
Yeah. The farthest entrance was ours. On the right, the farthest entrance.
Here's the school. This, and this were all theirs.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, when you're talking about just like trying to approach it, especially with that in mind, we're not even talking about having a good cordon set off to allow you to just pick what you need
The
to.
plan was really simple. Everything was straightforward. We just had to get from the 5-story building to the first entrance. And from there, the rest of the job would take care of itself.
Okay.
And honestly, we pulled it off pretty well.
Nice.
There's also the moment when they dropped us not at the 5-story we were supposed to start from. We had to cross a pretty
Oh my
dangerous
gosh.
section.
And that's the thing, like you can do, at least we're talking about the drivers, you can do map recon all day. You can try and pull up as much imagery as you can. Probably a little bit limited in some regard here. You know, I don't know how many assets they have to be able to get that. Drones potentially might be able to get there. But if we have this much Russian presence, they have like EW set up, there's a good potential you're not getting any drones there. But again, you can try and plan it as much as you want, but once you're there, something's probably going to go wrong. And we see it a lot with these videos is like they end up getting dropped off at the wrong spot, and then they just kind of have to adapt there. With special forces, you can imagine it's not too big of a deal, but it's more ground you need to cover,
This was the drop
more potential to get
point, and
compromised.
this was the 5-story building we were supposed to start moving from to this 9-story one. But they dropped us at this 5-story.
And it can get disorienting too if you're on the ground, thinking you're at one building.
We decided to cross
Or you got
the
another.
inner courtyard. But that was also dangerous because we were exposed to that 9-story building, which belonged to the
man.
bastards.
For real. I wonder why they chose that.
Well, when we were crossing, they started shooting at us.
Oh my gosh. I mean, yeah, if you can get to the side of it or the back quick. Their sector of fire is cut off, but still.
By
Then-
that time, we were already built up. We even spent some time talking with the backup. There were
already
guys
know
we
what's
had to
up.
bring into the 9-story building. The operation was supposed to start on signal. The signal was supposed to be an RPG shot at the first entrance door. While we were waiting for the moment, we had a quick briefing, and unfortunately, the briefing didn't even finish before an RPG hit. And the order came, let's go!
Oh my god, damn, and they're reacting. Okay, so they had some support teams
You step
set
out,
up.
and even though there's a fire support group, still, well, it's fun. I'll say that. You can't cover everything. Tons of open sectors.
Okay.
You go on alert, thinking that at any
support by
second
fire is
you
great,
can make
though.
contact, and
Having that reassurance to have some sort of security, your eyes out like a guardian angel.
Yeah, the
Really
first
helps a
floor
lot,
went
at least
in. They went in
psychologically.
with a grenade, of course. Took position on the first floor and waited for us to catch up with the second floor. We started working on the first floor.
Буря!
Yeah, it's so slow and methodical. And again, the staircase, you need to lock that down. Oh my gosh.
Пацаны, держу эти двери, один на лестницу.
Kind of reminds me of the Tarkov live action series.
After we cleared the first floor,
Who would
we
have
moved to the
thought like
second
you'd have
to make sure no asshole would come down and toss a grenade in our faces. We
Kinda
called in
similar
on the
modern
second
combat
eight-man team.
a little
They
bit
came
later.
in, worked the second floor. Meanwhile, they set up cover for the third floor. We swapped, moved up to work higher, and they were just
Nice.
chilling, smoking a cigarette. The challenge was that
There were 9 floors.
9 floors and 4 apartments per floor.
every dangerous section
no.
or area is fired at. If there's a chance to, doors are closed. Cabinets, sofas, fridges.
Even 9 stories is just exhausting, especially when your adrenaline's like spiking and dumping constantly. At least it's not too bad having to worry about like friendly fire.
a story to lighten the mood.
You can kind of set boundaries
let Head tell
pretty
a story.
easy.
My stomach was fucking twisted, like seriously.
Oh,
It
no.
was fucking awful. We cleared the first floor, another group went up to the second, and by the time we hit the third, I really had to take a shit again. So we waited until we'd clear all the apartments, all the rooms, and I knew it was safe to chill for a second since the group moved up. I grabbed another apartment, then we went higher, and I took one more there. That's how it was.
Oh my gosh. Hey, do what you gotta do. Fuck.
To avoid moving to the next entrance
is that?
under the building because it was too risky, we decided to try making a hole in the wall and get in from the top to clean the entrance
Nice.
from top to bottom. The
Yeah,
plan
that would've been
failed.
great.
An anti-tank mine took out the 8th floor, and basically we couldn't get through anymore. We cleaned out the
shit.
whole entrance, went down, pulled in the attachment.
Fuck.
We waited, had a smoke, then we went back to work.
Like, well, good idea. Too much bang.
The second entrance was locked from the inside. The doors were tied with laces and rubber bands. We tore them open by hand, basically. It wasn't that hard.
Laces? Jesus.
Пидоры, сдавайтесь, будете жить!
We went in, grenades flying.
Rubber bands, too.
It was clear as day there were bastards in there. Their ammo was scattered around. Russian medals, ribbons, all that crap.
Why are they bringing that shit there?
When we came back from the mission, people watching the
So
streams
random.
during our operation said that, yeah, when we went in, the bastards started escaping across the roof.
Also, when Baghdad
What?
yells, "Fuckers,
Oh my
this is
gosh.
our 9-story building."
Пидоры, сдавайтесь, это наша девятиэтажка!
They realized they couldn't handle it.
They weren't going to make it out.
It looks like they're not getting too much resistance from these guys. I mean, if I saw them or heard the violence of action, I'd also be like, Fleeing on the roof, though, that's an interesting move.
Держу.
So I like how you can kind of see it here, but they're doing like, when you have these kind of opposing danger areas, you can kind of see that they're holding cross coverage. So like, for this dude here, he has more depth into this room, because obviously if you're on this side, you can't really see in here much at all. And this dude over here is looking into this doorway.
Держу.
So you can see they kind of got cross coverage going on. Allows you to like clear out a lot of the room before even going into
Got
it.
to the 9th floor and
Watch each other.
decided to make a hole there too.
That's when the engineer tried to set up the anti-tank mine differently. There was a hole in the wall, but it wasn't tiny, so we had to put in another mine. Still,
no.
we had to work from bottom to top. We reached the third entrance with the first 4, and the doors were locked tight, not like the second one. We couldn't open them by hand, so we decided
Golly.
to have the fire support team try hitting them with one-time charges or FPV drones.
Oh man, that's smart, dude. Golly, the
We came back
ingenuity
a
is
second
insane.
time, and the doors were still the same. After that, a second team with the same engineer went in. He set up a shaped charge. It worked.
Nice. Oh yeah,
We went
dude.
in for the third time, but by then, the whole entrance was on fire, and the walls
Golly.
were black. It was unreal.
Держу двери.
They're laying waste. That support group, I hope they had a lot of ammo. It sounds
We
like
went
it.
back to the second entrance and decided to wait a bit, hoping the fire would die down
We
somehow.
thought it would die down, yeah.
And maybe it would get a bit easier to finish up, but it only got worse, because
Oh,
the fire
no.
spread to the second entrance and started coming down the floors.
Yeah, see, that's not something that they'll teach you in any sort of CQB school. I mean, we have certain drills if there's like an IED or, you know, some sort of kind of like booby trap set up to kind of egress out of that area. But I mean, if there's a fire, especially if there's a fire chasing behind you, makes it pretty much impossible for any sort of support to come in behind you. And then now you're kind of like, you're being pushed, you're in between a rock and a hard place. Either you kind of push the assault onto these guys and be a little bit maybe potentially haphazard with it, or, you know, you run the risk of this fire catching up to you. I'm not sure if it's necessarily behind them, but it sounds like a terrifying sort of prospect. Or if they're trying to even like clear kind of alongside this fire.
The evac, as usual, showed up at the wrong place. We had to walk a bit further.
Because we're athletes.
As
We
usual.
went back into the 5-story building. Climbing back in was actually pretty fun through a window. Turns out it's not so easy in full gear. Right? Кастет?
So I convinced myself I was such a
got footage?
badass that I could easily jump through this window with my backpack and AR. But it didn't go like that. I'm like, for the window, bam! Oops, fuck.
Alright.
I was like, guys,
Gotta go
let me
tortoise
in.
mode.
We came out the basement through the second entrance. We walked along this 5-story building and took cover behind it. There's a path here somewhere.
No, no. Here it is. We walked here.
Ah, here's the path. Yeah.
These guys
yeah.
all
We
look
came from this
super
corner,
swole, too.
walking along the path. There were fucking trenches here.
I tripped there.
Plus, someone else ate shit there.
Yeah, me too.
We reached this.
I love
little
how they
building
remember
and hid
that,
behind
those
it,
little
took
details.
position. It was getting hit by mortars, either this building or that one. Everything was burning so
Jesus.
brightly.
I didn't even consider like active indirect fire during all of this. So that's the thing, like when you're doing any sort of movement, even if it's like in training or what have you, yeah, going through the woods or something, everybody remembers when someone eats shit. It's the funniest thing ever, especially when it's like nighttime. Either if you have nods or, you know, you don't really need the nods because there's good illumination. But when you're in a formation, especially me, like I'm so used to being, when I was like team leader, but specifically as a squad leader, trying to like constantly, all you're doing is looking around to make sure the formation's still looking good and you're kind of having a security and you know where all your guys are. But then you'll hear someone, and you know the very distinct sound of someone eating shit. You know, they didn't put their foot high enough, or like their depth perception was messed up. So they tried to step on the ground, but it was a little bit lower than they thought, and then they end up falling. You know the exact sound of like magazines crunching and the rifle hitting the ground, the rifle hitting gear, all the backpack, all that stuff shifting. You know the exact sound. And it's so funny to just be doing a formation and hear that sound off on this side. And then you move a little bit and then you hear it off on this side. It's so funny. It's funny to talk about after too.
The Mavics started flying, and we went into the building. We found some old lady in there.
Oh my gosh. What the heck? She was
What
just
she was
having a
doing?
show this whole time.
No idea. The M113 came in with Spartan,
Babushka
and we
spy.
loaded up and bailed. When we
a
arrived,
drone.
we hopped out of the armor, relaxed a bit, had a smoke,
We switched vehicles in Toretsk.
drank some water, and then 2 of our Rochelles came in. We jumped in and headed home.
They just go over it so nonchalantly. It's wild.
The 9-story building burned for 2 days, and on the 3rd day, the bastards just leveled it to the ground.
Oh my god.
I figured the bastards that were there probably pulled out of there. I don't know. Maybe when we were working there,
Golly.
they decided just to fuck it and blow it up.
All that. That's crazy. Again, this is like a whole operation for like one building. And I don't know. You've seen footage and whatnot. There's a lot of buildings like that, especially when you're talking about just Europe in general. There's a lot of buildings like that. So to have like one specific operation for one specific building, again, we're talking about more like the strategic level. Like, why is this one building important? You can say it's one building, but you're not just going to clear out one building, especially obviously if you don't expect anybody to be in there. They had word that there was going to be Russians in here. They knew that there's Russians in there. They had some of their forces in the surrounding buildings, and they decided that that was a strategic area to kind of take over, at least, you know, remove the Russians from there. And yeah, that was kind of their goal. And it makes sense when you're talking about like the grand scheme, when you start looking at everything, that kind of closes off their ability to just kind of utilize all of those buildings, or at least kind of create like a shield or even like just a forcing function to get them to not feel comfortable operating in that specific town, in that specific area. So now they have to start moving all of these units around and kind of changing their routes too. You know, it's also funny to consider that like whenever we're watching videos of people who like very obviously know what they're doing when it comes to like close quarters battle tactics. I mean, we can see there they're doing cross coverage. They were firing from outside of the room before making entry, kind of pieing it off, using walls and doorways as a barricade to give themselves that cover. It's so funny when that's happening, there's less kind of like commentary to add to it because they're just doing everything right. It's easy to just be like, you know, pause. What did we just see? When you have people who just kind of like bum rushing into rooms, or just like lighting up areas that don't make any sense, or just completely dropping security, when like it's going to get very sketchy when that happens. I think it's just something that I've noticed whenever I'm watching these videos is I tend to comment a little bit less because I'm seeing everything kind of go smoothly, and you can kind of focus more on like the terrain aspect. And that's something that we comment a lot here with the like Ukraine close quarter battle, the urban combats, is a lot of these buildings get very dilapidated, very damaged with indirect fire or, you know, other things. There's a lot to add to it when you're talking about close quarter battle tactics. You're not going to be able to implement traditional tactics in a lot of these areas. With this one, it didn't look too bad, but again, when you're talking about the dynamic of adding a fire to it, you can try and plan, you can rehearse as much as you want. Same thing that we kind of see with like the Iranian embassy siege, oddly enough, is a weird kind of comparison. We have like the assault uniform getting snagged and like the repelling gear and the curtain getting set on fire. You can plan and rehearse as much as you want. Like the Special Air Service, they know what they're doing. They know how to plan. They know how to rehearse. But again, there's going to be these outside factors that just come in, and you need to kind of adapt from there. And with Special Forces, we know that they're very good at adapting. It takes a lot of kind of just self-discipline to be able to kind of assess the situation and not just freak out completely. Assess the situation, take a pause, and then understand how to take it from there. Like understand what your options are and take it from there. And usually the options will come kind of more with experience, like what have I seen before, or what to do. Like I have a very good understanding of my kind of kit or how to use the terrain to my advantage. That kind of comes more with experience, with understanding how many options you have, but just having that kind of self-discipline that we see with Special Forces to take a pause, not freak out, and adjust from there. You know, everything turns out fine, because that can be a make or break thing if you have people just freaking out because of one specific outside factor. But very interesting stuff. Of course, I would like to hear your guys' feedback on all of this. Again, I like to talk more kind of on the tactical level, but if we're talking about like an operationally and strategic level, it's also really interesting to kind of hear how y'all can fit in some knowledge or some background understanding, especially with this specific city. I mean, again, we've seen a lot of videos with this specific city and kind of understanding how it's being fought for, what munitions are being used, what tactics are being used, and why is it so strategic in the first place. When you're talking about kind of just the general front, of course, you can expect kind of combat in that area, but to kind of understand why they and how they take and categorize key terrain is super interesting for me as well. Yeah, I think I'm starting to nerd out a little bit, but yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, definitely consider liking and commenting and subscribing. I do appreciate it, and I appreciate these awesome recommendations as well. But that is it for this video. I'll see you on the next one.